Hi everyone. I'm going to give you 12 minutes on multi-cloud networking. So multi-cloud networking, who runs in more than one cloud provider right now? Who has to deal with public, private cloud? Who has to deal with containers, VMs, bare metal? Everyone. Maybe not containers, but definitely bare metal and VMs. So one of the problems that we were trying to solve about a year ago was, containers were new and shiny. We went down the path of Kubernetes about a year ago, but we found a disconnect between the way the networking worked, not only in the public cloud, the private cloud, and then there was a different experience if it was containers, VMs, and bare metal. So one of the visions for us was there a way we could actually leverage one SDN to solve all the problems? So we took a look around, and thankfully we were using OpenContrail, so they actually had a solution to use to solve bare metal and container networking, and we could also overlay it on the public cloud. So we actually went after what would that look like, and this was a journey of discovery for us. So I'm just going to document how we actually got to where we were. Now, if you want to take a look at the architectures, we published everything. There's a super user article in January or February of this year, which was how we built everything and what it looked like. So we created a test bed. So with that kind of overarching goal, we went after trying to get OpenContrail. So I worked with the guys at OpenContrail to build a Kubernetes plugin. They already had bare metal and VMs taken care of. What we went after was actually building an infrastructure that would support Kubernetes. So I don't know if you're all aware, but OpenContrail has a Kubernetes plugin, has a Neutron plugin obviously, and it has a bare metal plugin. So I worked with the Juniper team to actually build the Kubernetes plugin, and what we were going after for that was, if I have one SDN, can I run workloads in containers and VMs using the same network overlay? So I didn't want to go overlay on overlay, I wanted to go overlay one overlay. So that was the goal internally. So 6 months later we actually have something, and I did demo it at the launch of Kubernetes at OSCON in Portland this time last year. But that wasn't enough for us. We also wanted to provide, we had this requirement, don't ask me whether it's right or not, to actually move workloads between public and private cloud. So we needed some layer 3 networking that actually could traverse these environments. So what we built was, with OpenContrail, we built a control plane in AWS we were using. We had a control plane privately that was running Kubernetes and VMs. And using BGP, it's all open protocols. We could federate these backplanes and have a federated network that we could actually move VMs. We could move layer 3 addresses across. The real use case for this was actually Kubernetes and moving layer 3 workloads around in Kubernetes. So the design and the architecture that we published was how we actually built that. One of the things we did with OpenContrail that nobody's really talking about these days is, if you want the same security paradigms that you've come to love with VMs, so you want secure multi-tenancy. Let's say if you're using Kubernetes, you have an IP per pod, so you have a layer 3 interface per set of containers under a pod. How do you secure that with things like security groups, which don't exist in containers today? They're getting there. But we could take the same paradigms and apply them to containers with OpenContrail. So there's numerous blog posts and publishing about how the Contrail integration works with Kubernetes. Now, fast forward the journey we set up that test bed. I still don't know whether having this dream is actually valid. It seems that the industry wants to create a new SDN for everything that comes out, or a new product that does a subset of features. But you guys are the users in the room. I kind of challenge you. How do we move the industry forward? Because it seems the networking companies aren't willing to actually provide any governance. They're all doing their own thing a different way. But we as the users, actually, the guys on the ground trying to run these networks, want contiguous experience for our users, right? So rather than having a different SDN for containers, bare metal, and VMs, and tying them all together, which just becomes an operational nightmare for us, can we actually push guys to abstract these things into some common patterns that each one can have their own implementation? So I've been over voicing even in the courier, as networking comes along in containers and in OpenStack. But it's a call to action. We've got the power to actually say we have use cases here. I find that a lot of people I go and speak with are very frustrated in this space, but nobody's actually coming together and one voice. So is this multi-cloud networking actually something we need to go after? I don't know, but I'm issuing you guys with, if this is painful enough, let's all stand up and start talking about these things, because networking is overlooked all the time, but it's one of the critical pillars of the cloud. And if you don't get your networking strategy right as you go into the future with containers or bare metal or any kind of cloud technology, it actually causes you a lot of pain. And I've been through that journey personally, going from bare metal to containers, public cloud to private cloud. The networks all run different, and I can't have a consistent story. So I don't know what the answer is. I have plenty of ideas, and I've tried to create answers. But I want you guys to come and talk to me and incite discussion. I don't know what the forum is for that, but I know there's plenty of bright minds we can come up with something together. So it's really just a call to action, and I issue you with the challenge. So feel free to ask me any questions. I will get you the super user article. If you go in and type multi-cloud, there'll be Kubernetes article with OpenStack and bare metal all tied together. So you'll see what we actually did there in the weeds. All right, thank you.
Do you want to share your ideas?
My ideas? Yeah, sure. So, when I take a look at everything that's out there in the market, you've got your Calicos, you've got your Flannels, you've got this whole new wave of container SDNs that aren't actually coming back and addressing VM. Because let's face it, VMs aren't going to go away tomorrow. Nobody's forklifting everything out of VMs and droves and putting everything in containers. The business risk is too high. So there's this hybrid world that we're going to exist in, even cross compute vehicles for a while, right? Whether it's bare metal, whether it's containers, whether it's VMs. So I'm trying to push the vendors, my specific cases with OpenContrail, so push those guys to say, what's your answer to this story and how are you going to tie it in? So I have been pushing them. Juniper's come up with answers and is trying to actually make these things work, but still there are other vendors out there. If there's any of the Calico guys, they've putting things in Neutron, but what is the experience? How do people make a decision on how to do their networking? How do you guys see through all the mud that's out there and actually come up with an answer? So my strategy has always been to go out and test everything and see what it does and see where it falls short and map that to some requirements, but still there's not something that checks every box, right? And then there's projects that come and go. So we went with OpenContrail 1. It was open, but they had governance around Juniper. So we wanted to have Juniper. At least we knew that strategically there would be something there. I'm not saying it's the only solution. Flannel, Calico, all these other guys do a great job. But still, it's very disconnected. So.
Can you elaborate on specifically how the networking VM perspective didn't match the Kubernetes application and that on Kubernetes?
Right, so in Kubernetes specifically, so if you take Mesos and Swarm, I don't know, do I have to get off stage? If we can field these, wrap up. I'll repeat the question. So, okay, can I highlight, what's the difference between networking and VMs and containers, sure, or something like Kubernetes? So, when you go to Kubernetes, you're making a decision to go to a layer 3 interface per pod. Every other orchestration doesn't do this. It does host ports, right? So that's a distinct difference where you say you've got a layer 7 boundary as opposed to a layer 3 boundary. Right, when you do that with Kubernetes and you're off-prem, you're off Google, you need to route those layer 3 networks, right? So if you want to do this with an SDN, you need something that understands how to set up IPs per pod into network namespaces and get that back onto your SDN. So Kubernetes imparts a lot of weight as a networking person when you build it on-prem. And I went to KubeCon last year and said networking sucks in Kubernetes if you're off. What are you guys going to do about it? Nobody's coming up with anything, right? So I started going in there, but that IP per pod thing is a strength of the platform, but it puts a lot of weight on you operationally. So don't have great answers, but that's something to take into consideration when you're using Kubernetes. Yes?
Just a little bit more on the business need or your use case to go from public to private.
Right, so we had this business need to actually move workloads, fairly lightweight workloads, into the public cloud. It was actually a reaching decision. So let's say somebody needed something in China tomorrow. I could deploy a VPC in AWS, put some Kubernetes infrastructure, and just create a destination for our CI, and actually just go blomp and then move the load balancers over there and do that. That was kind of the situation. So we could have the Chinese processing somewhere else, then we could just pick it up and put it there. Again, I don't know that was the right use case, but that's what we had right now. And did anybody see my keynote in Tokyo? I actually demoed the whole multi-cloud thing that I'm talking about now. Day one in Tokyo, I got up and showed off Git commit how somebody would deploy to multiple clouds off our pipeline. But we had all the networking set up that I was speaking about, and we built all that just to show, to do the demo and actually just to prove it out.